822. Irish Spectrum it is. Watford Colosseum is the venue for comedy play Nobody's Talking to Me. You can book now for a performance on Friday 13th of October at 7:30 as it is on for one night only. Now the box office is 01923 571 102 or online at watfordcolosseum.co.uk. Details are on our website irishradio.org. Now here's a clip from the show to whet your appetite, and I'll be speaking to the guest all about it in just a moment.
I don't know what to be getting you for your wedding anniversary all the same. Is there anything in particular you'd like?
A divorce. The last thing I'll be doing round here today is celebrating, believe me.
For heaven's sake, Maggie, will yourself and Matty not try and make things up?
Even my own mother knew I was making a mistake. She warned me not to marry him.
Why not?
She said she didn't like the unusual growth he had on his neck.
On his neck? What was that?
His head. And I hear Frank Leonard is on the mend. He was dead but to bury him last week, but I heard he sat up in his bed yesterday morning and had 2 bowls to stir about for his breakfast. He's as tough as leather, that fella. They were saying that a week ago the doctor wanted to send him to the hospital for an x-ray, but he was that thin that all they ended up having to do was catch him by the long johns and howl him up to the tilly lamp to see through him.
Really?
Aye. Mind you, he still ended up in hospital, the poor fella. He had to have a skin graft.
A skin graft?
Aye. The long johns caught fire in the lamp and it nearly burned the arse of him.
Are you serious?
Aye, and did you hear Nellie Meehanishing well?
No. What's wrong with her?
She was eating a hard-boiled egg on Thursday morning and she swallowed the spoon.
Well, will you go away?
Aye, swallowed the spoon, so she did. And I hear she hasn't stirred since.
My next guest, Tommy Marren, is here to tell us more. Tommy, good to speak to you again.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Hilarious clip, I must say that. Tommy, you've a lot of personal investment in Nobody's Talking to Me as the writer and also performer. It's flying in Ireland. Tell us what you expect, what we can expect and why it's appealing so much to audiences.
Well, again, Jerry, I suppose it's the old adage, the old stuff seems to be coming back. Everything has its circle and eventually it comes around again. And as we've always been saying, amateur drama here in Ireland has always been very buoyant, and John B. Cain, Tom Murphy, all of these old plays, whether it's Size, Many Young Men of 20, all of these plays have a special place in the hearts of people. But I think there's also an appetite for new material based in the same era or genre, i.e. the 1960s, 1970s, when, people did their business, did their lives without social media, without contact with anything other than human beings. So that's kind of, I suppose, the idea of writing It's the Real McCoy, and now this play, Nobody's Talking to Me. And yeah, it is. It's flying in Ireland. We're doing our second tour at the moment. We're in Navan this weekend. That's where I am right now. And we have a full tour dates right through until the 8th of December. And, the audiences have just absolutely loved it. Simple, Irish, and very clean comedy.
Well, congratulations on the success. This is a chance for young and old to indulge in a little escapism by looking on at the antics of the Conway couple, married 50 years but at loggerheads. It's true to say the humour is a common denominator. Now, you mentioned when we last spoke that you're pleased many young people are actually hearing good feedback from young people who turned out to see the play.
Yeah, and I think, with respect to Mrs. Brown's Boys, that kind of comedy, I mean, I do compare what we do a little bit to what Mrs. Brown's Boys is all about, but we kind of avoid the bad language. But, younger people have really, embraced that whole type of comedy with Mrs. Brown's Boys. And as a result, I think they're starting to think, well, maybe we should go and look at more of this. For example, last night, Jerry, there was a mum in the front row with her, I would say, 13-year-old daughter. And after the play was over, as we do every night, we stand outside and we thank people for coming. They can go up and say hello to us if they like, or they don't have to. And the 13-year-old girl came up and she said that was the best night I've had in ages. And for us to hear that from a 13-year-old is great. I mean, I know the comedy appeals to the older genre of audience. But, it's just that young people are starved of live theatre. That's probably part of the reason. And, when they see it, they absolutely love it and they embrace it. So, yeah, it's appealing to all age groups. We were supposed to be in Watford, of course, with this play earlier this year, but sadly, at the very last minute, we had to pull the plug because of one of the cast getting sick. And, so many people got in touch with us by email after that and on Facebook saying how disappointed they were. And I suppose the proof of how much they want to see it is that the percentage of people who cancelled was literally something like 3%. So the majority of people who had booked said, look, we're happy to wait until October.
Absolutely fabulous. Now, the duration of the show is 2 hours. In addition to the central issue of the estranged couple, there are also a number of subplots which are also a very funny diversion in the whole play as well.
Yes, and I think it's always important that whilst you have a main, storyline, the storyline is Matty and Maggie Conway, 50 years married on this particular Sunday. They haven't been to church, and when they find out that the local parish priest has announced from the altar it's their 50th anniversary, and that he plans to go and visit them that day to renew their wedding vows, all hell breaks loose, because only very few people realise that Matty and Maggie hadn't spoken a single word to each other for 10 years. So that's the main plot, but you always have to build subplots, in order to keep the story going. So there are lots of them. For example, Matty and Maggie live with Matty's only sister, Minnie, who's a quiet alcoholic and a hypochondriac. You have the next door neighbour has died, Barclay O'Dowd, and his wake is in full swing. And then, of course, you have the priest coming to do the renewal of the wedding vows. So, as you can see, the whole mix makes for quite a lot of intrigue and drama.
Indeed. Now, there's clever timing and periods where there's actually no dialogue, and yet the audience is still highly amused. This is an original dramatic technique, and I suppose the only way to find out how you get everyone laughing is to go along and see for yourself.
Yeah, and I think from a writer's perspective, for me as a writer, it's the first time I've tried this kind of a technique. And it's true, for the first 7 minutes of the opening half and for 13 minutes of the second half, there's absolutely no dialogue. So you're depending solely on visual comedy. And it's really great to sit in at the side and hear all of this laughter going on without a single word. So it goes to prove that comedy can be more than just about words.
Indeed. Now, the action takes place in rural Ireland in the 1960s, but the theme of breakdown in communications could equally, of course, be related to a modern relationship. Do you think this contributes to the storyline sort of striking a chord with people?
I do, and when I wrote it, I didn't think it would, Jerry, to be honest. But having spoken again to audiences as they come out every single night, and it was a bit like It's the Real McCoy. I mean, the storyline around McCoy was about the fact that this woman was left on her own for 40 years. Her husband, out of the blue, disappeared and never got in touch and suddenly arrived back after 40 years. And I never thought that could happen, and we found out that it did. And the same applies this time round. The numbers of people who come up and say, my grandmother and my grandfather were a bit like that because my grandmother didn't speak to my grandfather for years. She used to serve up his dinner and his supper and his breakfast, and they went about their business as if everything was normal, but they didn't speak for whatever reason. And it's quite extraordinary, the number of people who will say that they have experienced it, maybe not in their own generation, but in a previous generation, although I'm sure it goes on today as well. And, in many ways, it's not a very funny subject to talk about or to have as your main core storyline in a comedy. But it wasn't written with anything in mind other than it being just totally fictional.
Right, now that's giving us some insight into it all. But your own website, www.croakyplays.com, goes into detail about the storyline, and the images give a real flavour of what it's all about. Now, the characters are colourful. Are they loosely based on real people, or would that be telling?
Well, I think they are, because I think there were always strong women and strong men back in the 1960s and 70s, as there are today. It was a different type of steeliness, let's put it that way. But yeah, I think it is fair to say that in every community there are, very strong-willed women, there are very strong-willed men, there are gormless people who maybe aren't the full shilling, there are people who drink in silence and not in public and so on. So yeah, obviously very loosely based on general characterizations of general people, but nothing specific.
Right, now the Irish rural comedy Nobody's Talking to Me, it's starring Tommy Marren, Jerry Carney. It's not to be missed. Now you can watch the drama unfold at 7:30 on Friday the 13th of October at the Watford Colosseum. Now the box office there is 01923 571 102. Websites watfordcolosseum.co.uk or irishradio.org. Tommy, listen, thank you for talking to me and joining me once again. It's been intriguing to speak with you, and wishing you continued success. Looking forward to your visit on the 13th of October.
Jerry, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Tommy, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to speak to you again.
Bye-bye.
Irish Spectrum, there we go, Tommy Marren.
Hey, baptized Jesse Taylor. in Cedar Creek last Sunday. Jesus gained a soul and Satan lost a good right arm. They all cried hallelujah when Jesse's head went under, 'cause this time he went under